Hogstye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Hogstye. I'm your host, Alex Zeese. I got Steve with me. Jamal, I believe, is still on vacation, soaking in the sun, drinking Mai Tais. I don't know what he's doing, but he's enjoying his life.
He's not here.
Yeah, he's not here. He's posted a few pictures, I think, on social media.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. Looks like he's having a good time.
Social media, better known as Satan's playground.
Yeah, well, that's mostly Twitter. Mostly.
All of social media is evil.
Facebook's like the first level of hell. And once you get down to Twitter, that's like fifth level of hell. Yeah. I don't even know what TikTok is.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many levels of hell there are in
that
Dante's Inferno. Well, okay, guys. Today, good show we got lined up. We're going to be talking a little D-line in the draft, secondary, free agents. Then there's some stuff about Joe Gibbs meeting with Rivera, which isn't that interesting, honestly. I think the big story is going to be, stay tuned. We're going to talk all about that stadium stuff that came out towards the end of the show, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. Real quick, I want to mention the passing of Charlie Taylor, legendary player. I think for you and I, Steve, when we get to guys who played before our time, like Taylor, it's kind of hard to quantify what he really was as a player. You just know he was a legend. After he played, he became a coach, right? And worked in the front office here. Is that right?
Well, Bobby Mitchell is the one who was in the front office here.
Yeah. Okay. Mitchell was in the front office. Taylor, I think, just coached for a while. Yeah. He won a couple rings with as a coach.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get a sense of who some of these guys are when they're past our before our time.
Right.
Because all we see are some highlights and some stats and stuff. So it's hard for me to, I think, fully appreciate who he was, but clearly a legend. Certainly rest in peace, and our best wishes to his family.
Yeah. 13 seasons with Washington. He had 9,110 yards, which I believe was the record when he retired. Which it feels like that's not a lot today, because you're talking about a guy who had one 1,000-yard season in his career. But given that he played in the 60s and early 70s, those numbers are actually pretty impressive.
Well, the football was so different in the 70s. It was really a running-based offense.
Yeah.
There weren't a ton of pass. If you look at the stats for guys like, Terry Bradshaw, for example, he wouldn't make a roster, at those stats today.
Right.
But obviously he's an all-time great, and I'm not disparaging him at all, but it was just because it was just a different game. But in terms of yardage, in terms of completion percentage and all that stuff, quarterback rating, it was just a totally different game. And so Charlie Taylor, if you put Charlie Taylor in a modern offense with modern training techniques and all that, you have a whole different set of stats.
Oh, yeah. I think the one guy who I always kind of think back to in that respect, Billy Kilmer, I think, threw 14 passes in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
How nuts does that sound today? 14 passes is a quarter now for some guys.
Sounds like the Baltimore Ravens.
Right? Yeah.
Who are an anachronism.
And I should also mention, he was also a running back and receiver, because he also had almost 450 carries, which is...
Well, him and Mitchell both did some of that.
Hmm?
Him and Bobby Mitchell both did some of that.
Yeah. Well, again, that's what people did back in the day, man. It was a different game.
Yeah, it was.
It was really a wildly different game. Pre-Air Coryell, even. All
Alex,
right, well...
I'm just embarrassed, by the way. You're wearing a new Washington Commanders shirt.
Yes.
Come on, man.
I am. It is a yellow and burgundy W T-shirt. They made them so poorly. I will say that, too. Steve, you can't tell on camera. This shirt like the material they use is so thin I can see my body hair through the shirt, and
So
that's not a
hopefully you're
joke.
not wearing that outside the home today.
No, my wife has actually forbidden me from wearing it outside because of that.
I wish the team would send me a gift box so I could set it on fire and put it on our Twitter page.
Right. Um,
God knows why they haven't sent us a box yet. I'm just
I
amazed.
don't know. I mean, we've pretty much badmouthed the owner like every episode the last year, so that might be why. Um,
Possibly, yeah.
but we like Rivera, and I like Jason Wright. Still, you don't, but
I don't hate the guy. I just don't. I just think he's uh,
overrated.
overrated. He doesn't have a good sense of the team's history, and I
Right.
think he's made a bunch of dumb decisions. And no longer being a fan of the team, I'm trying to be more objective about it. You know,
Yeah, he's made some mistakes. I think that's fair.
he's made a lot of mistakes, and I don't know. I mean, trying to think of what good he's done. I mean, he hasn't fondled a cheerleader as far as we know, so that's a positive.
Yeah, that kind of gave me a little cough reaction. All right, why don't we talk D line in the draft, and we'll start there, Steve.
Okay. You don't want to let me
I
bash
need
the
a
team
minute.
for
Hold
another
on.
10 minutes?
Can you start going through them? I gotta like clear my throat here.
Alex is about to die here. Okay, we're going to start. So, we got a week behind in the draft, partly because there were a bunch of other things to talk about, partly because I just forgot when we
Yeah, we
set our
lost
schedule
track.
up. So some of this is my fault, some of it's circumstance. But so what we're going to do, we're going to play catch up a little bit this weekend, next week. So we're going to do the entire defensive line today, and we'll do the entire offensive line next week, and then we'll be caught up, and we'll go position group by position group,
Yeah,
from there on out. So we're going to start with edge rushers, mainly because Alex is done coughing, but I'm going to start edge rushers anyway.
yeah. Well, that's how we wrote it.
Yeah. So and obviously, the idea here is we're going to publish an accompanying piece, kind of like what we're doing with free agency. We're going to publish an accompanying piece every week on this. So, edge rushers. Obviously, first of all, Washington does not need an edge rusher. They don't need to draft an edge rusher at any level. They've got a million of them. They've spent more draft capital than there is draft capital on edge rushers recently.
Right.
So this is sort of a hypothetical here, but this also makes me a bit more willing to talk about it when it's hypothetical. The number one guy you need to know is Aiden Hutchinson. This guy is possibly the number one overall pick in the entire draft.
Yeah.
Many people have him rated number one overall. 6'5", 270 pounds from Michigan. Very experienced, 36 games in 4 years. 156 tackles, 17 and a half sacks. Unanimous All-American, consensus number one edge rusher, prototypical size, can play either 3-4 or 4-3. He's he's kind of known as a freak of nature type of guy in the weight room, a lot of
Right.
strength. The weakness that I've seen is from him is that he doesn't have a tremendous burst necessarily, and he may not need that if he's got this much strength. And the other thing is he's not known to be a particularly good run defender, which isn't all of that uncommon for some of these elite pass rushers. So that's
Right.
Hutchison. And again, think number one overall, top three at worst. Next guy is Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon, 6'5", 258. The consensus number two overall, number two edge rusher, not number two overall, but he's another guy, top 10, maybe top 5, a very elite player. 30 games in 3 years at Oregon, 19 sacks. Last year, he was a unanimous All-American, 7 sacks. He was a productive 3-year player. And in today's college football, I mean, that's almost a rarity, anymore. He's not known as quite as an instinctive natural pass rusher as Hutchison, which is why he's rated a little bit lower. He's going to need some help with that to improve, but he's still, the consensus number 2 and a top 10 pick. George Karlaftis from Purdue, 6'4", 275, 26 games in 3 seasons at Purdue, 14 sacks. Last year, first team All Big Ten, third team All American. What's hurts him a little bit is his best season was actually his freshman year in 2019. He played 12 games, 54 tackles, 7.5 sacks. Last year, he went down with coronavirus, only played 3 games. I mean, not last year, 2020. Um, and so he did play last year, obviously, 12 games, not quite as good, 39 tackles, 4.5 sacks, first team All Big Ten. Um, so it's a little bit of a risk, I guess, because he has less experience. He's known to have decent strength, but he's not an elite run defender. He's not. That's not what he's known for. He's also more limited to a 4-3. So the next guy, and I'm going to go over 2 more here. David Ojabo is the other side from Hutchinson at Michigan, 6'5", 250. He's very, very inexperienced. This is why it knocks him a little bit. Only played 20 games, 620 snaps, didn't even play football at all. He's from, I forget, some country in Africa. I forget where. So he's not, football is not kind of in his blood in that regard. Didn't start playing football until junior year in high school. Last year, 13 games, 35 tackles, 11 sacks. Fast dude, runs a 4.5-ish 40. Second team All-American, first team All-Big Ten. Very, very athletic guy. Possibly better in a 3-4 just because of his size.
He's from Nigeria, by the way.
Nigeria, okay, yeah.
And then moved to Scotland, and then to New Jersey.
Right.
That's a weird little path.
Yeah, Nigeria to Scotland. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever gets you here. Jermaine Johnson, 6'5", 265 from Florida. He's been around. Started out at Independence Community College in Kansas. Played there for 2 seasons. Transferred to Georgia, 2019, 2020. Then transferred to Florida for 2021. So he's used up his entire eligibility. In Division I, 28 games, 106 tackles, 18 sacks. That's between Georgia and Florida. I'm not counting the community college stats. ACC Defensive Player of the Year, first team All-ACC, mid 4.6 range for 40 time, so good but not great. Known as a high motor guy, can fit in any system. Possibly an underdeveloped pass rusher, so it maybe have some room to grow in that regard. He's more of a somewhere between round 1 and round 2 guy. David Ojabo, by the way, is sort of a mid to low round 1. That's where he's projected to go.
Okay.
Last one, Trayvon Walker, 6'5", 275, true junior, 29 games at Georgia. Only 6 sacks last year. This dude is known as a tremendous athlete. More than anything else, tremendous athlete. If you think of Walker, think athleticism. Possibly better in a 3-4 system. More of a run stopper. He's a round 2 projection. So that's kind of an overview of the top of the edge rusher. I didn't go too in depth into this because, again, I think Washington would be nuts to draft an edge rusher this year.
Right. And, the same thing does apply for defensive tackles. Steve and I co-wrote this column because we realized we needed to get it all out.
Yeah.
So he did ends, I did tackles.
Right.
Again, there's a consensus number 1 defensive end. I was looking around at various draft sites to kind of get a feel for the defensive tackles. Every site I looked at had different guys at the top. As I wrote in the column, the 3 guys coming out from Georgia, Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, and Trayvon Walker, all are somewhere in that top group.
So you notice Walker is versatile because you're calling him a defensive tackle. I called him an end.
Right.
I think he can.
He's kind of a tweener. What did you have him listed as?
I had him listed as an end, 6'5", 275. I had him at number 6.
Yeah. So at that weight, I guess you could either put weight on or pull weight down, and decide if you're going to play end or tackle, right?
This means he's versatile.
Yeah.
And probably in the NFL that may be a bit small for an interior player, but if he's athletic enough.
Yeah, but if you put on 15, 20 pounds and you're up to 295, then you can play in the interior, no problem.
Yeah.
Especially today. Those 3 guys all seem to be listed in the first round for sure. Who's the best? I don't know. And then the way that I rounded out the top 5, just looking around, figuring out some other guys who might be in that list. Winfrey out of Oklahoma, and then Leal out of Texas A&M. It doesn't seem like I saw guys who Some draft boards had in their top 3, and other draft boards wouldn't even have them in their top 15. So like there's really very little
Yeah.
consensus about defensive tackles. There's a lot of good ones here, but not a lot of elite guys. In Washington's case, though, and you can read all the details in what we wrote. I think they might go for a tackle late in the draft. One, we've heard they're willing to move some of these defensive linemen if they were to get a quarterback. We know that Tim Settle's probably leaving, so they're going to need to replace him.
He's a free agent.
Yeah.
By the way, he's not on the roster. So I do think they've spent a ton of draft capital on defensive tackles too, but I think if they're going to do one, it would probably be defensive tackle.
Right. And I'm thinking like 5th round, 4th round, or later, you know. So I listed a couple guys here, just so if you guys want to go look at some of these guys. The one that really stood out to me when I went and started just watching highlights of all these guys, and I'm going to butcher the name, Isizi Otomiwo out of Minnesota. It's a confusing name.
Probably not right.
But yeah, he played both defensive tackle and defensive end there, 3-4 and 4-3 looks. So he's got that versatility. We know Ron and those guys love versatile players who can kind of just do everything. He played 34 games in his career, 81 tackles, 7.5 sacks over that span. Just looks like a really good athletic player. So that would be one guy I'd look at. And then Neil Farrell out of LSU. I think anyone out of LSU is probably getting a bump these days just because of how good that program's been lately. He gets in the backfield a lot, though. That's what I picked up on with him. He just can get right into the backfield to make tackles.
Washington could use that. I mean, that's the strength of the team, if there has been one, has been the defensive tackles. John Allen and Ron Payne's ability to cause problems.
Yeah, no, this team has had a couple of really good.
Of course, the amount of draft picks they've spent, it ought to be,
Right. You kind of wish that you'd see that level of production from the end position, but it's not.
I mean, I don't know what to even think about Chase Young anymore. I mean, I know there's some sycophants out there who swear by him and all that. I mean, he's been a disappointment in my book. And just forget about my position in the draft, because I know I was one of the only holdouts, and people don't let me forget it. And I was never really disparaging. All my point was I would have rather had Isaiah Simmons because I think linebacker was a bigger need. That was all I was ever saying about it. But Chase Young's been a disappointment. Can we admit this? Is it okay to admit this? His rookie year was good,
it's absolutely okay to say last year especially he was a disappointment.
Well, and his rookie year was good, but not great.
Right.
It was a good start, and then obviously last year was going horrifically until he had the injury.
Right.
And so I don't know what to expect from the guy.
To make it even more horrific.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, like everybody has their panties all in a wad over, trading defensive linemen for quarterbacks and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, listen. The only person who would be off the table for a trade on this entire team for a quarterback would be Terry McLaurin, and him only because the quarterback would want Terry. There's nobody I wouldn't trade on this team to get a truly elite franchise quarterback.
Yeah. And we kind of, Young. I think we talked about it pre-show. Aaron Rodgers has basically said he doesn't want to come here, apparently.
Who can blame him?
Yeah. So that trades off. But, if it takes even two of these defensive linemen to get someone like Carr, I would be game
in a heartbeat. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, because guess
everybody.
What? We still would have three very good defensive linemen on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, they got to negotiate this. I mean, I'm not saying they just offer up Chase Young immediately,
right?
But would you give him? I would give him up in a hot minute for a franchise quarterback, real franchise.
You start every negotiation with, "I'll give you 3 third-round picks," and work your way.
If you do that, your name is Bruce Allen.
Yeah, I know. Actually, that feels like more of a Vinny move.
That could, both of them. But Vinny probably did do that at some point in time.
Well, didn't he offer 2 firsts for Chad Ochocinco at one point?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds familiar. That
Yeah.
sounds familiar to me. And listen, I don't know if who it would be, and I think Russell Wilson would have to be an idiot to want to come here. Also, I mean that's crazy
Right.
talk. Not Jameis Winston, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
My rare Twitter post was today and last night about Deshaun Watson because you guys have lost your mind. You've lost your mind if you think Washington, of all teams, should bring Deshaun Watson here.
Right.
That is crazy. I don't think you guys have a full appreciation of this. And frankly, there's a lot of you guys are arguing with me on Twitter who have taken a very inappropriate stance on these allegations.
I would say morally questionable.
You're calling these women, prostitutes and, all of that. It's inappropriate completely. These are pending cases. This is why the Me Too movement happened, because of people like you. And you're talking to a conservative here, okay?
Right.
But you can't just dismiss these, take the quarterback's side because he's a good quarterback and totally dismiss these women as hoes, which is what you're doing. So you guys ought to be ashamed of yourself.
There's certain things that are not worth winning football games over.
Yeah, I agree. And I think trading for bringing here Watson to Washington, of all teams, at any price is a mistake, no matter what.
Honestly, and this is where you and I may differ. I don't know. We've not talked about it, but even if he were to settle these out of court at this point, to me, it's already too toxic.
I think it would be a terrible look. I agree with you. And remember, I mean, these criminal charges are pending, and I think that the criminal charges are probably pending because of evidence, not because they're questioning whether this happened. The problem with the criminal charges is that ultimately this comes down to a he said, she said thing in these cases. Mm-hmm. Unless there's a blue dress somewhere, and if you guys don't know what that is, look up Monica Lewinsky and you'll know.
I think most people will know what blue dress means.
Unless there's a blue dress.
Yeah.
It's a he said, she said thing. So my guess is that the DA, who I know personally and I trust and I worked with on a daily basis years ago, before she was a DA, would do the right thing. But I just think it's probably an evidence thing. That's why it's taken so long about it. So anyway, I agree. I think bringing Watson here at all, imagine this. Washington turns a corner. They got rid of the evil, hated Redskins name. Dan Snyder, who fondled cheerleaders and did everything wrong under the sun, has been kicked to the sideline in favor of his former model wife.
Right.
And we're starting a new era in Washington football. And how do we do that? With the guy who was accused of sexual misconduct with 22 massage therapists.
Yeah.
How does that look? That's just... No.
It's not a good look.
No.
All right, why don't we talk about the
Sorry, I didn't
next...
mean a tangent, but I was really
it's fine.
about it.
Hey, look, I got really bored one day when work was slow, and I went through all 20 quarterbacks.
Did you?
Yeah, I just started looking at all the 20 quarterbacks who people said might be the quarterback here next year. I still put Watson last. I can't in good conscience say he should be here.
It's a terrible, terrible look for the team.
Yeah. He was 20 out of 20. Like,
yeah,
I'd rather Taylor Heineke start way more than bring him in. All right, why don't we talk about, we were going to do free agent secondary preview.
Alex.
So this was another one where we kind of collapsed safeties and corners all into one post.
Well, I did it intentionally from the beginning, just from a timing perspective.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. And this was... This one was me having to take this on. So I would, I didn't list every single defensive back, that would have taken forever to go and watch and look at, what is it? Probably 40 defensive backs who will be free agents this year.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. So, but I did highlight a couple big names. Now, when we're talking about corners, just to put the team in context, they've already spent a lot of money on corners. I don't think they can afford to put another $10-20 million into the cornerback group at this point.
So Fuller
even
and
though they need
Jackson
help,
are both signed at huge money through 2023.
Yeah, those two alone are $25 million.
Yeah, their cap hit is 25 million combined, 11 and change for Fuller and 14 for Jackson.
Right. Then you spend a third round pick on Benjamin St. Juste, who looked good until he got hurt.
Right.
But so I did list some corners who could be out there. They're going to all command way more money than this team's willing to, spend. J.C. Jackson out of New England, he had 8 interceptions last year. He's going to be the top of the market, I think, this year. That's a guy who will get $15-20 million.
I don't think there's any way Washington could ever afford him.
No, unless they're willing to cut somebody like one of those 2 big names. I don't know what their cap hits would be. I'm sure.
Well, if you want to hear that, since
yeah.
we have nothing but time.
Yeah.
So. Okay. I was on the wrong column.
Yeah.
William Jackson would be very tough to cut. You could cut Fuller. Fuller is dead cap is $6.25 million. As a pre-June 1 hit, so they would save a little under $5 million by cutting him. Jackson's cap hit is $17 million. Now you could do it as a post-June 1 thing and take on 8 this year, and then the rest in 2023.
But it's not saving you a ton.
It's not saving you anything as a overall.
Right.
Overall, you're losing. He's got $14 million on the books this year, and then next year, 15. I mean, so you could pull it off to where it wouldn't kill you. But still, I mean, that's a lot of dead cap.
Yeah. I don't see it happening.
And he wasn't that bad. Was he great? No. But, I mean, he had his moments.
And just financially, though, it doesn't make sense.
I thought the team misused him. Once again, it's like they do this with these corners. You bring a dude in who's known as a press man corner, and what do? You make him play zone.
You make him play a lot of soft zone.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah. All right, next guy I had mentioned was Rasul Douglas out of Green Bay, just 26 years old. Probably would be less expensive, but probably still too expensive for Washington. Dante Jackson, who he was in Carolina with Ron, so we always got to throw those guys in there, right? Especially on the defensive side. You got to give that hat tip. And then the last name I mentioned as far as corners that, we should notice, Kyle Fuller, one of the many Fuller brothers.
You just had to mention him.
Yes, just have to, because his brothers on the team, they're like they all played at Virginia Tech. They're local guys who, there's a segment of fans that have always wanted to get like multiple Fullers onto this team for some reason.
I mean, I personally, I don't think they're going to do anything with the corner group.
Nothing big money wise. They'll find some Jags,
Well, they have. They'll bring in some guys, to fill out the training camp roster. But in terms of, don't forget they re-signed Corn Elder. To a 1-year deal, so they have him. In St. Jude, so they've really got 4 guys who are kind of roster locks.
Right.
I think, because I do think, they like Corn Elder, and I think he's certainly the money is small, so they could cut him, but.
Right.
I just think he's in St. Juice, obviously 3rd-round pick. He's got another year no matter what. So I just think they're kind of locked in, and obviously they'll DJ Hayden's here also, by the way. But I mean,
they might bring back Danny Johnson or somebody.
Well, they'll have a few for training camp for sure.
Right. Well, and we're talking about special teamers anyway at this point.
Yes.
So they need those. But all right, safeties, more interesting discussion. And I want to kind of preface it with. The way I'm thinking about the safety market is they need a free safety still more than anything else. Landon Collins, even if they keep him or cut him, strong safety, inside the box guy. Cam Curl, more of a strong safety than a free safety. He's more balanced, like he can play, in the backfield a little bit better. But I still see him more as a strong safety, better in the cover 2 than Landon.
I think so. Yeah, it's certainly better. Yeah.
Yeah. So what they really need is, and Bobby McCain is a free agent, right? Like we're going to have to either re-sign him or replace him. That's why I wanted to focus on free safeties. Biggest name who could be on the market would be Tyrann Mathieu out of Kansas City.
Huge.
Probably the best safety in the league. I doubt he leaves. I think Kansas City would be foolish to let go such a good player, but they've also given $50 million to their quarterback. So
yeah, I mean, and for those you don't realize, I wrote a column that I never published about Patrick Mahomes' contract.
Yeah,
It is a disaster.
that $500 million
Well,
contract or
it's
whatever it
not
was.
even so much it was not even so much the bottom line number. It's the way it's structured.
Mm,
Is they're locked into this dude for like 7 years.
right.
The way it's structured is that he's got roster bonuses that guarantee 2 years ahead of time every
Mm,
year. And
wow.
so, in other words, if they want to get rid of him, they have to think about this 2 years ahead of time. And so it's in effect, sort of has the effect of being a fully guaranteed contract for like 6, 7 years, even though it's really not. So
Sure.
they're going to end up money is, the base salaries aren't that big, but these bonuses send it into the stratosphere. So
Right.
Kansas City is going to have problems.
Right. So that's the only way I see him really becoming a free agent would be if they realize that I don't even know what their cap hit is right now or where they are cap wise.
I don't know.
The next guy I mentioned was Marcus Williams out of New Orleans. He's only 25, very good player, great. I think he's a perfect fit for what we need. Like he's very good. He can do center field, like so he can play a lot of cover one. If Collins is down in the box, he can. I think he's versatile. He's got great speed. The reason I think he might be out there, New Orleans is still in cap hell. They're
I would call it a total catastrophe.
Yes, they were $99 million over the cap last year. I still don't understand how they got under the cap. You
They
know,
pulled a bunch of crazy stunts.
yeah,
They jiggied around with Taysom Hill's contract and
right,
signed him to a new deal and gave him like 5 years, avoidable years to limit his cap hit.
right.
They pulled a bunch of stunts like that. Drew Brees, before he retired, did the same thing.
I the Taysom Hill thing. I almost wonder how the NFL isn't like investigating that kind of contract.
Listen, they approved the contract.
Yeah,
You know.
but you know what I mean. Like that's a shady thing.
Oh,
to
it
do.
is. I mean, it's a stunt.
Yeah,
And again, Drew Brees did kind of the same thing, and so they saved a lot just from those two guys alone. But
Right.
they're going to have to. Yeah, they're in serious trouble. this
yeah.
year.
I think they're 70 million over the cap
Yeah,
now.
it's 70
So
something
I wouldn't
million.
be surprised if a lot of their free agents walk. So this guy could be available. If he's out there, that's who I would target. He's young. He's very talented. Great speed. The last one I mentioned, and this is probably an more under the radar guy. Marcus May plays for the Jets. He's also very rangy, but because he plays on such a terrible team, I wouldn't be surprised if he's overlooked. He's a little older. He's 27, but he would be another possibility.
Yeah,
To me, he's more in that Bobby McCain range. Like he's not great. He's okay. Like I think he would fit that role just as well as Bobby McCain does.
I'm not going to pretend to know much about Marcus May. I think Marcus Williams would be a good fit, but I think all this is contingent on what they do with Landon Collins.
Absolutely, that's
you
partly
know,
true too.
Yeah, so Landon Collins, cap wise, he's at 16.2 million cap hit this coming year, but he's only got 9.6 million in pre-June 1 dead cap, and so they could cut him at a savings even pre-June 1 if they wanted to. So they're not locked into him anymore.
No,
So, but I mean, I think the team kind of found their niche with him. And so it
yeah,
really
having him
depends.
play linebacker basically.
Yeah, in which some Hogsty analysts told you that day one, and
Right.
nobody listened, but that's fine. But that's kind of his niche. So it depends on how Ron Rivera likes him.
Yeah. Well,
really.
and look, we've talked a lot about how you use Landon Collins and build around Landon Collins, right? I think we're more or less in agreement. If he's going to be that, you either need to play a 3 safety look where he's playing that linebacker role, or you need to play a lot of cover 3 and have a free safety over top of him who can cover the whole dang field, and your corners are covering the sides.
Yeah.
Like
So-
Landon limits you to certain things.
Yes, he's an in-the-box player. It's just as simple
Right.
as that. He's in the box. He's 15 pounds from being a full-time linebacker, if you
Yeah.
ask me.
Yeah. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. He's very good at that. when
No,
you
no,
use
no.
him.
Listen, he was an All-Pro in New York for a reason, but I think New York cut him because they wanted more versatility,
Right.
more than anything. So if they sign one of these guys, I don't think that they're too. They obviously like Cam Curl, and we
And they
should
like
point
Bobby
out,
McCain. I won't be shocked if that's they just bring him back.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And we should point out that DeShazer Everett is in this group. His status totally unknown.
Right.
I don't know we've not really heard how his health is, and he's been charged now with involuntary manslaughter. I think
you just got to count him out at this point.
Yeah, at this
even
point,
though I always liked Everett, with what happened, you can't.
Maybe it was vehicular manslaughter. I'd have to look again, but he's been charged with a felony, and so I just have to think he's gone permanently at this point.
Who knows how long he would get in a trial?
Well, I mean, there is a death here, so that counts. But in the world of felony, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Right.
And this is coming from someone's jaded and used to prosecute some. So, I mean, I don't think he would get more than a couple years, probably, assuming there's no alcohol and assuming he doesn't have a record. And I don't know if he does or doesn't have a record. But it doesn't appear as though there was alcohol involved. And there were no other injuries but the woman who unfortunately passed. So I tend to think it would be something along the lines of a couple years at most, maybe, for this.
I mean, I remember we looked up Dante Stallworth, and he only got 90 days in jail or something like that.
Yeah,
so it was actually very small.
Well, and alcohol was involved in that. It was a DUI, case too. So that's not to say he's not going to go away forever, but I mean, I just can't imagine he plays.
Yeah,
this year.
Even though as a player I always really liked him, you gotta just assume he's not going to be able to be back next year or the year after or for a while.
And he at times started at safety. He wasn't just a special teamer.
And I mean, he was a good special teamer, great spot fill safety. To me, he was basically what Reed Doughty was for a lot of years with Washington.
Bit, yeah.
Remember how Reed Doughty, the plan was never to start Reed Doughty, and he started every year. Because
Sean Taylor passed, and all of a sudden he's the starter.
Right, and then they bring in somebody else, and he sucks, and Reed Doughty becomes the starter. They bring in another guy, he gets hurt, Reed Doughty's
the starter.
Reed Doughty played 10 years like that.
If you ask me, I think Jeremy Reeves is probably going to step into DeShaver's or Everett's shoes.
Yeah, Reeves has got that potential.
Yeah, all this is to say that I agree with you. I think the best thing to do would be to bring back Bobby McCain.
See, I don't think that's the best thing. I don't love Bobby McCain. I would rather go after someone like Williams.
Okay.
One, he's younger. I think he's about 3 years younger than Bobby McCain. And look, that's a career in the NFL.
You said the most obvious thing. I thought you said the best thing. My mistake.
Oh, no. I said the best. Yeah. I think the obvious thing is they're going to bring back McCain.
Yeah, that's what, So I would probably take the easy road and just do McCain. But I also think McCain's looking for a payout. I think he's looking for a multi-year deal. He kind of came here on a prove-it deal. And he did prove it to some. He had some stumbles early in the year, for sure.
He was okay. He wasn't.
But he was okay.
Bad.
So I think he's probably looking for a 2 or 3 year deal.
Right.
And whether Washington wants to do that, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean he did lead the team in interceptions, so I should. But there's more than just making picks to playing free safety. And that's where he was good at turnovers. The other stuff he was just okay at.
And if you're going to give a multi-year deal to somebody, certainly Marcus Williams would be probably a better prospect for that.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, that was safeties. That's corners. I think we're kind of in agreement what direction they're going to go with that whole group.
Yeah.
I'll be more expecting them to use the draft to fill in stuff in the secondary than anything else.
Yeah, I think they're going to go out on linebacker. We'll get to linebackers.
Yeah. We'll get to that. When are we doing that one? Is that?
Give me 1 second. I just closed it.
I think it's a few weeks from. I think that's 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
All right.
I think I was trying to save linebacker for a really dead week. Because that's an important one.
Yeah. That's a good. It was a good plan. All right. Why don't we talk about this crazy stadium stuff that came out?
Wait a minute.
What was
Hold
that?
on a minute. Wait a minute. Wait. We're idiots.
What?
We already did linebackers for free agency. Jamal did it.
A
week ago. We know what we're doing on this show.
So, do we? I don't know.
Now, in terms of draft is what I was thinking of. I put linebackers at the end, April 8th.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that week. So that was what I was thinking. But Jamal already covered linebacker, so you can go look that piece up if you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. There were one or two big names. I remember
Yeah.
now. Yeah. All right. Why don't we talk about the stadium then? Let's reset. What was it? Yesterday, something air quote leaked from the state of Virginia of their site A, site B, and site C, the places that the state really wants to put the new football stadium. Site, and so I'm just going to list these, and then we're going to talk about it because
Okay.
you and I both have very strong opinions on all of this. Site A is, as I checked it, 40 miles from DC. It's from my house, it's 40 miles. From the center of the city, it's 35 miles. And that is at Potomac Shores, which is really just Dumfries. Have you noticed this, Steve? And you work in this world more. Like, when an area has, like, a terrible reputation, they just try renaming it to trick you. Like, because
to a certain extent,
Dumfries, no one wants to be in Dumfries. It's, it is not.
It's a long way. It's almost down to Quantico.
It is. It's
that's
right.
a
It's the
long
suburbs
way.
of Quantico.
I don't even necessarily consider that. I mean, it's been a long time since I lived in D.C., but I wouldn't have, when I lived there last time in the 90s, I wouldn't have considered that the D.C. area necessarily.
It's not. It like people down there are like, we're part of. No, you're not. You're shut up. No, you're not.
Well, that's a
you're
long
Virginia.
way. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a long way.
You are as far and actually you are farther from D.C. than Baltimore at that point.
You're almost halfway to Fredericksburg at that point.
Yeah, yeah. You're just Virginia. So that site A is Potomac Shores. The reason they want it there, according to what I believe, who's the Richmond reporter, Michael Phillips.
Phillips, yeah.
Yeah. The folks in Richmond really want the stadium closer to Richmond so that Richmond people can go to games.
How
That's
short-sighted is that?
yeah. So that's their thinking. They want it on 95 so that's easy for people to come up from Richmond. Site B, not it's along the same way, but it's a little closer in. It's Woodbridge, Virginia. It's I guess what? That's 25 miles from the city. So
Still
a little
what
closer.
I would consider to be the outskirts of reasonableness.
Right. And then site C is the Loudon Quarries site, which if you look on a Google map, folks, and you see where Dulles Airport is, and there's a big intersection from, the roads, the highways, it's basically catty corner from the airport.
Yeah, now JP Finley put out a map and had the dot in the wrong place.
Yeah.
If you're looking at it. It's sort of at the corner of 267 and 28 is my understanding.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Like I said, there's like a Clover intersection. It's catty corner from the airport.
I mean, even that is a long way, long way, but it's far more reasonable than the other two sites, I think.
Right. So, I'm going to start with what my theory is.
Okay.
They put out these three options. Loudon is the only one with one metro access. The other two are 12 miles from the nearest metro, or further. They basically said, here's two horrible ideas, and then a third idea that's not great, but it's so much better than these horrible ideas that maybe people will like it. I wonder if that was the thinking here.
I don't know. It's possible. I mean, I think it's a bit short-sighted if the Virginia legislature or the governor's office or whoever's putting this out is prioritizing access from Richmond over access from the D.C. area, which is a much, much bigger area than Richmond. So I think that's kind of dumb. And frankly, I mean, it's not the Virginia team. It's the Washington, D.C. team.
If they move that far out, it is the Virginia. It is no longer a D.C. team.
If you're putting it down at Quantico, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Put them there. We can get an expansion team at that point.
Well, I don't. Yeah, the NFL wouldn't do that, but yeah,
I know.
Yeah,
because they're
just
stupid.
being facetious. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
So my thought, I think the Quantico site. What do you call that one?
They call it Potomac Shores.
Okay,
it's really Dumfries.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Dumfries site is ridiculous. That's just way too far to have it be a Washington D.C. team. I think the one that makes sense and has always made sense is, as you said, the one out near Dulles. Even that is pretty long way out. But you guys have to understand, from a land use perspective, I know everybody wants it, would want it inside, ideally in DC, ideally inside the Beltway.
Right. Or
There's a
on the Beltway.
massive cost associated with that. A huge cost,
Yeah.
and you're talking about, um, it's not raw land. There's no raw land inside the Beltway of this size. So you're talking about, demolition costs, and it's just inconceivably expensive to
Right.
do that. And so I don't think it's realistic to think that you could put it anywhere inside the Beltway, if you ask me. And in DC, I mean, itself, even assuming you're willing to acquire that many, there's so many other issues. There's federal issues.
Yeah.
It's just so complicated to do anything. And the Washington, D.C., the district government's already paying debt service $30 million a year on the National Stadium. And so
Right.
are they going to take on another 3 times that size in debt?
No,
Yeah,
they
the
would
debt service.
basically have the best the DC government could probably ever offer would, if they could even get the land, would be here's the land. That they could not offer any money for building.
Well, I
the
looked
stadium.
into the structure of the transaction for the National Stadium, and the D.C. government took out a huge loan
Right. But
through private lending to build that place. But that's a stadium is a whole nother level of funding, and I don't think the D.C. government can do it.
no, I don't think they can build a stadium. That's for sure.
I don't think they can finance it,
No.
even if they wanted to. And so I think you're looking at Dan Snyder to do it. And
Dan Snyder can't afford to do it right now because he's
well,
paying.
you see, yeah, I mean, first of all, Dan Snyder's obviously toxic, but to a certain extent, I think stadium financing sort of guarantees itself a little bit. Because the principal security is going to be the stadium, and then the guarantee from the owner personally. But I think these lenders would be apt to do it, and there'd have to be a bunch of different lenders. I mean, nobody. If you don't understand this, nobody finances this much by themselves. So there'd be a lot of different lenders involved.
Right.
But I think Dan Snyder could do it. Forget about his toxicity. But I just think the land use issues in DC are way too big to overcome.
Look. I
And he's
think
not
in
going to
the
get the
city.
best deal. He cares
sure.
about the deal. Virginia's willing to give him the best deal. It looks like. So
Well, Virginia's the only one willing to give him a deal at this point.
I don't know what Maryland's status is. The last time I looked, Governor Hogan was talking about Washington, about the team. So I don't know if they're willing to ante up or what.
I mean, I think they're willing to. DC, only the mayor is willing to even talk about it. Basically, the whole city council's like, no, not as long as Dan Snyder's there at this point.
If you're too corrupt and bad for the DC government, that's
Right.
a sign.
Then you're not corrupt. You're not too bad and corrupt for Virginia.
Well, that's the other thing I like to bring up here, and certainly, the new governor of Virginia is on my side of the aisle, and I'm glad he got elected and all that. But, do these guys not know who they're dealing with? Do they don't care that they're willing to overlook everything because they're so desperate to have a stadium?
I
Is
mean,
that it?
I don't want to get into the whole political side, but no, they don't care. And a lot of them, Dan Snyder's their kind of guy. I think
Maybe. Maybe that's it.
you know, like that. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And
because you're really
look,
dealing with the devil. You're doing it. It's Charlie Daniels.
Yep.
Reborn to do this.
and here's I've always come back to one big thing. What has Dan Snyder ever done that's been successful in terms of this kind of stuff? Like,
not in terms of anything. Business
well,
wise.
he made all his money with like a phone marketing scam. So like he
Yes.
did that.
Did you guys not know? Alex knows.
Yeah.
Does everybody understand that Snyder Communications was a sleazeball telecommunications thing? Where
Right.
they were buying and they were digging up data on people and selling information on people. And he saw that company and went under immediately as soon as he sold
Right.
it.
Well, I'm pretty sure the stuff he was doing is now considered illegal.
Yes.
Like at the time it wasn't, but now
Right.
it
No,
is.
he wasn't breaking the law, but it was still a totally sleazy thing to do. And then he famously got thrown out of Six Flags, and they had a hostile takeover to get rid of him out of
Bankrupted
Six Flags.
Johnny Rockets. You
got
know,
ran out of parent. He jumped into bed with Tom Cruise,
right?
and he somehow got out of that, and somehow
Well,
out
the
of
movie
that too.
tanked, right? The
It
Valkyrie.
wasn't just a movie, though. I mean, it was they were investing in Paramount somehow, and
Right, right, right.
and there's more to it than just Snyder. But the bottom line is, it didn't work. I
I'm
can't think
surprised
of
his
a
boat
single.
didn't sink. Like that. That's kind of
We'll
the
give it time.
yeah.
you know,
That's kind
he's
of the mo here.
and he's obviously ruined the Washington Redskins franchise.
Right,
There's not one thing in business that this man has done that has succeeded.
right. Yeah. So that All right. So looking at these sites now, I went and I just GPS
The
how
Redskins, the
far.
team's gonna hate us so much.
I don't care anymore.
I don't
I
either.
so I Hey,
I'm,
and look, by the way, I've seen a lot of like big time fans, like people who are like fan ambassadors and stuff, basically say any of these sites I'm out. Like a lot of people are mostly anti it being all the way out there.
well, I will say this. Um, I think if the team could ever get its act together and start winning and look like a professional team and not a disaster,
Right.
I think they could play in the parking lot of a Piggly Wiggly and people would go.
Oh,
I
sure.
don't think it matters where it is. Sure, like the Alex Thesis of the world probably wouldn't go, because you don't like leaving the city. I mean, I get it. And some of these guys are in Maryland and, all of that. But the team doesn't care. I mean, the stadium, if they win, the stadium will sell out, period. And if they don't look
Probably.
like a mess, they have to get out of the hellscape that they're in and then also start winning. If they do that, the
But
stadium will sell, no matter
but
where it
Steve,
is.
you say that, I'm going to be realistic about this team too. They ain't going to be a successful team until Snyder's gone.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying in the hypothetical best case scenario,
Mhm.
it doesn't really matter where they put it; it'll sell if all those things worked out. But nothing. I mean, the team won't win with Dan Snyder.
If you're getting, let's say, what was it, 20,000, 30,000 people into the FedEx Field area, you put it as far south as they're talking about, and this team is as bad and as toxic as they are, you might have 5,000 people at a game.
If they're as bad and as toxic, yes.
Yes.
It doesn't. They could put the team. They could rebuild RFK Stadium.
Right.
And people would not go if they remain as this toxic.
Yes. Oh, definitely. But
I guess I'm saying I don't think in the world of stadium, I think history shows us that that attendance is not dependent on location. If you look at, for example, the Dallas Cowboys Stadium is way out in the middle of nowhere.
it's right. It's basically because Dallas
In the world
and Fort
of DMV,
yeah.
in the Dallas Fort Worth area, I didn't mean DMV. In the Dallas Fort Worth area, it's way the hell out in the middle of nowhere. It's
Well,
it's
smack
25
dab in
miles
between
from
Dallas and Fort Worth, right?
It's 25. I'm telling you, I've been there.
Yeah.
And I live in Texas. It is way the hell out there, but it sells because it's a great stadium, and they have they have a ton of fans. The Denver Broncos stadium is way out. I think
That one I'm not sure, but I've never been to the Denver Broncos.
the new
Stadium.
one.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's stadiums that are far out that sell, but you just have to win. And this team, again, you could rebuild RFK and call it the Joe Gibbs Stadium, and it wouldn't matter
Right.
if Dan Snyder is there and the team is a disaster.
Yeah. There is kind of a catch-22 with all this stuff about that.
I don't know how Virginia. That's what I'm saying. I don't know what Virginia's thinking.
Right. Well, in my thing, a lot of people have pointed this out, obviously, where they're talking about putting it down south there, like on 95. 95's a mess. It's not a very good highway. You were talking about the
Is
Dallas
it
Fort
traffic
Worth.
bad in the good, even in good times?
No, I mean it could take you 5 hours to get from DC to Richmond, thanks to how
Even
bad
on a
95.
good day.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and it's a 2 hour. It should be a 2 hour drive. 95, you can't really do much to fix 95 either. It's not, like I guess you could expand it a little, but it's not a whole lot. You talk about the Dallas Stadium. I've driven by it, once or twice when I was down in Texas. That highway's huge. At least they have good infrastructure to get people in and out of there. They're not going to have that in 95.
No.
I heard some people. This one I actually laughed at. Some guy was on the radio saying, "Oh, they'll just extend Metro from Springfield down there, and then it'll be fine." It's a 12-mile thing,
You guys understand how much Metro costs
To
to
yeah,
expand?
well, I actually
Billions.
do
I
because
know you do.
yes.
You people
So
listening, it costs billions of dollars.
to expand Metro to do the Silver Line, which is what they've been working on the last 10 years.
Where does the Silver Line go?
It goes from I think not Vienna. Oh, where's West Falls Church out to Dulles. That's
Oh,
the one
okay.
that would run to Dulles Airport
Okay.
now. That was going to cost them $6.5 billion at the time. It's looking more like $8 billion, and it's the same length. So let's say you're doing this, and now we're talking 5 years out. You're talking $8 to $10 billion to probably expand Metro that far, and those are not. Those 8 is probably the conservative number, right? So
Things tend to have a
yeah,
tendency to run
Metro
over. Yeah.
expanding things like Metro is very expensive, and this is all above ground. This isn't even digging tunnels. So
It's still it's not just let's just slap a Metro out there.
yeah,
I mean you just
it's
don't
not
know
just running tracks.
people don't have any idea what they're talking about.
Right. Building the stops is very expensive, all that. So that's not happening. VRE might run out there, the Virginia Regional Rail. VRE doesn't run on weekends right now. VRE only goes one way on weekdays. It's the worst.
And is that I don't even know what that is.
It's a regional rail system. It's
But is that like multiple stops or is that
yeah.
just,
It's just a local commuter rail that
okay?
they only run rush hour. They run like three
So
trains
it'd
in the
have to
morning,
be
three trains at
dramatically
night.
expanded. The service would have to be dramatically expanded
Right.
to be useful.
Right. VRE is probably the worst run of the 3 major mass transit things in DC in the DMV area.
Okay.
So, it's the poorest, I should say. So
I mean, I think the one that would be easiest on everybody is certainly the Dulles Airport site.
yeah, Loudon Quarries would be easy.
Makes more sense. 66 goes out that way, and there's other roads, and that Silver Line. I didn't even know it went out that far.
Yeah,
nowadays. It didn't when I was
there's
there.
one stop at the Dulles Airport, which is about 3 miles from where they're talking about, and then there's apparently one stop I didn't even know about this, right on the other side of the highway interchange, which should be like a mile walk.
When you have to assume they could probably get a stop done,
Well, the stops are built. They're still just trying to get the tracks done. I've gone out to Dulles once or twice. The stop's there. I see it when I drive out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really think that some people are saying they probably proposed these just to see if they could scare Maryland and DC into doing something. But
Well, I mean, when you negotiate these things, I mean, certainly there's an element of the team trying to play one government off the other,
right,
for sure. But I mean, I just don't know. The ones I have been involved in, the owner hasn't been completely toxic,
right,
And so this owner is so toxic right now,
right.
I mean, I don't think anybody but the Snyder family even wants him as an owner,
No,
And so I just don't know how the impact of that, how much that will impact his ability to get a stadium deal done, because I've just not been down that road. You have to think that some politicians who have some shred of credibility left would not want to do a deal with him.
yeah, but that's what blows my mind. Honestly, I would have assumed that even Republicans in Virginia would have been like, we can't do a deal with this guy.
Listen, there's sleazeballs on every side, okay? The D.C. government's sleazier than everybody. Point is, I don't trust any of these politicians, and I think none of them would be doing themselves a service by jumping into bed with Snyder. No matter what party
they
they're in.
really aren't.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else to add
And
about.
Alex and I are on the total opposite sides of the fence, and so we have dramatically different opinions. Politically, we have dramatically different opinions about politics and stuff.
Sure.
So some of this is he and I disagreeing. But point is, I think it'd be dumb for anybody to do a deal with Snyder right now.
I think that's a terrible thing. I think that's bad for anyone to do. And honestly, 2 of these sites should be non-starters. But here's my thing. I've come to realize that whatever I think you should do as a football team, the Washington football team will do the opposite. So my guess, based off of these, these sites, they will go even further south. They'll go south of Quantico. That's kind of.
I just think that to a certain, like I said before, within reason, I guess, location doesn't dictate attendance. That's what history tells us. Location does not dictate attendance. So I don't think that they're afraid to put it 20 miles out. Yeah, people are going to complain on Twitter or whatever, but Twitter's a microcosm of reality. Twitter's the opposite of reality. And people get so wrapped up in it because they are addicted to it and, on
Yeah.
Twitter all day long. But you have to understand that that's just a tiny fraction of people, and it's a dramatically skewed opinion. But so I don't think that people would not go because of the location. People would make a day of it, maybe. But what really keeps people out is the team sucks and Dan Snyder's a pariah.
Right.
That's what keeps people away. It's not the location of the stadium to me.
I mean, look, I think there definitely is some that, but I think it's also them just giving up on a huge chunk of the fan base ever really coming. Like people,
They don't care where they come from as long
right,
as
right.
they get 70,000 people in the state. They don't care where you
Yeah,
come
yeah,
from.
I know. But I'm just saying, like, you are
And a lot of
basically
people would make
saying,
a day of it, though. A lot of people in Maryland would go. They would drive that far, and they make a day of it. Enough people would do it where they would sell the stadium out, and that's all they care about.
well, if they're good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, put everything. I mean, Snyder gone, team good,
Mm-hmm.
all of that. Enough people would drive that far and make a day of it that it would be okay. And whoever doesn't, who cares?
Yeah, that's going to be their approach. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of covers the stadium stuff. The last thing I had on the list, just a little, if you haven't read it, go to The Athletic. There's a interesting story where that I believe Standig wrote that apparently Ron Rivera went and met with Joe Gibbs after the season to just kind of, he was doing this with John Madden for years too, where he would go to these more veteran coaches and, get them to kind of help him evaluate how his season went. And apparently Gibbs did not, pull punches on Rivera. They didn't go into any details in the story, which is a shame. But he said that Gibbs was hypercritical of the mistakes.
I don't think Ron Rivera's been that good, if you ask me.
He's been very average.
Yeah, I mean,
7-9 and 7-10. I mean, what do you want?
Well, and frankly, that's what his history is.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about what happened in Carolina.
Yeah.
He had the one great Super Bowl year when he had an elite quarterback at his prime.
Mm-hmm.
But most of those years were average, even with Cam Newton.
Yeah.
And Ron's made questionable decisions, I think. The defense, if anything should have improved, it would have been the defense, and the defense has not improved.
Right.
Especially considering the amount of resources they put into it. I mean, he screwed up the quarterback situation royally, just horribly, mismanaged the quarterbacking situation.
The one good thing about the quarterback situation is at least we haven't screwed it up like Bruce Allen did, where we put a lot of money into somebody like Alex Smith who then couldn't play.
Well, I mean, they didn't trade away the farm for RG3 to see him
Right.
collapse
Right.
2 years later. I mean, haven't done that. But, I mean, go back to the beginning, though. Would Dwayne Haskins have made it with any coach? Probably not. But, I mean, did Ron Rivera really give him a chance? Not really.
No.
And then the Alex Smith situation was kind of mishandled. They traded for Kyle Allen, never played him.
Yeah.
I mean, Taylor Heineke got the job because no one else was there, mainly. No
Yeah.
one else was left.
Yeah.
I just think he's kind of screwed that up, and the free agent signings didn't work out. Curtis Samuel, I don't know. I've not objective because I'm free to be objective about this now. I'm not that impressed with what Rivera's done for this team.
I mean, I think he's a good person.
It's been terrible circumstances.
Yeah, and he's been in bad
fair.
circumstances. You're right there, but here's my one thing about the quarterback that I'll say to defend him about the quarterback. The mismanagement of the quarterback by the previous regime, Bruce Allen, for about 10 years. The whole Dwayne Haskins, Kirk Cousins, Alex Smith saga put this team in a bad financial situation at that position. And they were going to have to, at some point, take their medicine and reset at quarterback, which is what
Why
they did
did they
last
draft a linebacker last year?
Right.
Why don't you trade for a quarterback last
Well,
year?
I mean, that's a fair question. I mean, but I'm
Jamin
just
Davis
saying,
is more important than trading up a few spots to grab Mac Jones, just off the top of my head.
I'm just saying, they always, you can't put it off forever. At some point, with the way that the NFL salary cap and all that works, you have to have a reset year. If you screw up bad enough financially, you kind of need to
But they
zero
were
out.
never in a huge hole, though.
I mean,
Not
I feel like they
not
were in a
like the
fairly big hole
Saints.
from Alex Smith, weren't they?
Not as an overall. They had a lot of money in the quarterback room, but from an overall salary cap perspective, they were never in cap hell. Not like other teams were.
Oh no,
Yes,
no,
they
they
had a
haven't
lot
been
of
in
money in the
overall cap
quarterback
hell,
room.
no. But
They had a lot of money in quarterback room. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and it
Um,
was dead money because Alex Smith wasn't able to play.
yeah, right. I just don't understand. Like last year, really befuddled me. I mean, you're okay with going. I like Heineke and all that, but I mean, you're okay with that, and you're going to bring a linebacker in
Mm.
and ignore a what, by all appearances, at the time we all thought was a very very good quarterback year,
Yeah.
and you let Bill Belichick of all people like grab, for example, Mac Jones.
Well, I mean,
I don't get it.
I don't know if Mac Jones would have been their guy, but
No, I know.
I know
I
what
mean,
you're
that's
saying.
just who's coming off the top of my head. You
Yeah.
know, because you're not going to trade up and get Trevor Lawrence. I mean,
No,
nobody
but you
thought
could have
that.
maybe gone up for Justin Fields or somebody.
Somebody,
Yeah.
right?
Uh, I mean, that's the big thing. Like, who knows if they work out? But then you
The
at least
odds are
have
they
hope.
aren't going to work out. But I
Right.
don't know why you didn't try.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And Jamin Davis, I mean, inexperienced linebacker who hasn't played much.
Mm.
Most people had him ranked lower.
Oh,
And they got
look.
fascinated. Like they got just. It's like looking at a pretty girl in a magazine. They just got fascinated with him because of his athleticism.
At this point, I honestly think that if you were to evaluate draft classes, and I know it's still early, I think Jay Gruden did a better job drafting than Ron Rivera so far.
I mean, it's too early for
It's
that.
it's still too early, but I and we've
Certainly,
had.
it's not in much better. I'll say that much at a bare minimum.
I think it's significantly enough where I can say I feel that way.
I mean, neither one of them ever found a quarterback.
No, that's true. That is true.
And how many years is Ron going to go without finding a quarterback?
Well, and see, this is where it becomes and look, we could do a whole another episode on the
We're
quarterback.
about to. It
Yeah.
sounds like.
Honestly, he's in a quagmire because again, there's a structure to how every NFL team does this successfully, and we never follow it.
No.
Get a GM picks coach picks quarterback, and you got to do it in a year. Maybe you get 2 years. You get 1 year where the coach, can evaluate the roster. Then he picks a quarterback his second year. We're now in year 3. You've screwed that whole order up, which means you're probably going to have to go and start over, which means Rivera doesn't get to do it.
He's already in year 3 of a 5-year deal.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You let Rivera pick his GM. You already had a quarterback who he didn't like, and then another quarterback who you're paying a lot of money. So, again, there's an order, and they do it backwards every time. They did it to Jay Gruden. They've done it to Rivera. They didn't. Mike Shanahan's the only last coach who got to pick its quarterbacks.
Even then, though, I mean, history seems to show that Dan Snyder drafted RG3 and Shanahan didn't
So
really
here's
want
my
him at
thing.
that
I don't
price.
necessarily trust the Shanahans.
I don't either. I think
side
that
of that.
Shanahan's are liars, and
Yeah.
they're not taking responsibility for what happened.
Right.
But it also seems to be accurate to say that Shanahan wasn't all that excited about him at that price, considering he drafted Kirk Cousins 3 rounds later.
Right. And Mike Shanahan also, the story came out, Mike Shanahan got the McNabb trade to happen. And then after it didn't work, no, that wasn't me.
Yeah, I don't trust Shanahan. I don't like the Shanahans. I don't trust them. They're liars.
Yeah.
This team hadn't got it right for, 25, more than that, more than 25 years.
Yeah. I mean, okay, Gibbs definitely picked his own quarterbacks and owned up to them.
Brunell. Yeah.
Mike Shanahan never owned up to the quarterbacks he picked.
There's no doubt that Joe Gibbs picked Mark Brunell.
And he picked Campbell.
Yeah, Jason Campbell. And Jason Campbell, weirdly, is one of the one of two who were competent for this team.
Right.
The
Now,
other being
I would
Cousins.
say Patrick Ramsey was thrown on Gibbs. So we keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah.
Stop getting quarterbacks and then getting coaches. You got to let a coach pick a quarterback, and you got to have them do it early.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yes.
You know,
I mean, they threw Haskins on Gruden, and Gruden, at the end of his tenure, it's just
right.
crazy.
Oh, they screwed Gruden over hard there.
Well, you could write a book on how to mishandle a quarterback and use Washington's drafting and development of Haskins as the example
As yeah, well, and I would also say
from
that
day
with
one.
yeah, you could also say that with RG3. Honestly,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, from every perspective, the owner screwed it up. The owner let RG3.
yep,
The owner should not let RG3 in the room. Go talk to the coach.
right.
Don't let him, have that much ego. Don't let him dictate to the coach what the
Especially
play calls and, the style of. No, that's for the coach to do.
especially at that like I probably feel that way even with someone like a Tom Brady, but at least a Tom Brady has earned it at a point, you
Well,
know.
it's a totally different circumstance when
Right.
you're 15 years into the greatest career ever.
Right.
You
That's what
know.
I'm saying.
And I don't know who to blame for the injury in the playoff game with RG3. I still don't know if we'll ever know.
Well,
But I mean, Shanahan was the coach.
you have Shanahan,
ultimately.
RG3, and Dan Snyder, three people who never take responsibility for their own mistakes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the problem. Not leaders. I
They
mean,
haven't had leaders. The only leader they ever really had was Joe Gibbs.
yeah. Steve, you've been in many situations like this, I'm sure.
Yes.
Real leaders take blame even when it's not their fault, right?
That you have to stand up and say, "This is my fault."
Right. Even if it's not. Even if
Right.
you protect your guys and you say it's my fault. You know, that's the
Yes.
one thing I give Rivera credit for. He does do that still. You know, like
The one thing I'll give Rivera a lot of credit for, is he has kept the team from being just, obsessed with the scandal in the front office.
Oh, yeah.
A weaker leader, that would have really made the team fall apart, and he did keep them together. That's the one thing I give him credit for.
yeah. I think he's been good in those respects too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know what we're gonna do, man. Like quarterback, this is not a year to get one, and this is the year he's got to do it.
I mean, from an objective standpoint, I haven't finished watching all the quarterbacks yet,
Yeah.
but the ones I've watched, I haven't been impressed with.
Well, so
I haven't watched Kenny Pickett yet, and our writer Paul Francis swears by Kenny Pickett. And I got I'm going to do him next. So I can't say anything about Pickett, but the other guys so far, I mean, I watched Malik Willis. I studied him pretty closely. I studied Matt Corral.
right.
No.
My thing with all of them though, Steve, and because the one thing we really could take away from Taylor Heineke is even if you don't have all the tools, if you have that good mindset to play quarterback,
Yeah.
it goes a
It'd
long
be
way.
okay.
And
Yeah.
for all his faults, Heineke had it the stuff going on in the brain. That's what you want from your quarterback, for the most part.
You could only put Taylor Heineke's head on, somebody else's body.
Right. So and that's where we can watch all the highlights and stuff we want. I don't know what's going on in any of these guys' heads.
No.
I could tell you if Malik Willis has Taylor Heineke's mindset, he could be an all-star. Same with half these guys.
Well, I'm okay with drafting almost anybody at the right spot.
Right.
I'm okay with drafting Willis, but I don't think he's a first-round pick.
No, I don't think any of them. Objectively, they're all second round or third.
I haven't
round.
watched them all yet, so I can't.
Well, but
say
you know what
all
I'm
of them,
saying.
but yeah,
If you look at how they're grading them, most of them should be in the second round.
certainly in other years they would be. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my thing, man. It's all about the mentality. If they have the right mentality, they all have enough tools to become good starters. All these guys. It's not like
you
they're
can't have total
talentless.
chaos around you is the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, leadership starts at the top. You wonder why this team hasn't been successful. It hasn't been because of coaching.
No.
It's been because the leader at the top, Snyder, has not established a proactive, positive winning culture. He's established the opposite.
Right.
He's established chaos and losing and disaster.
Right.
That's why, look at the teams that win consistently. What do they have? Leaders at the top.
Mm-hmm. Look, you got to manage your own ego before you can manage other people's, right? That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that
But
should.
please credential us anyway for training camp.
Yeah.
Smile.
Yeah. All right. That should wrap us up this week. because we're just going to go on this tangent, I think,
Yeah, I
after
know
the
it's
show.
already been a while.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're in the off season.
Yep. All right, guys. We will talk to you next week. Later.